really talk about true or false, 5 assumptions about real estate marketplaces in developing markets, emerging markets, being debunked by data. So over to you, Ed.
Thank you, Simon. So as he said, I'm the editor of onlinemarketplaces.com. I don't run a real estate portal, and to be honest with you, I don't really know much about how property is actually transacted. So when I was thinking about a presentation topic, I thought, well, how can I be useful to all you people who are experts? Mainly, I can be useful because over the last 3 years, I've been collecting a lot of stats on real estate portals. That's kind of my job, to read about, write about, know about, and collect stats on real estate portals. And these stats are kind of useful because although it doesn't really allow me to go into depth, what it does allow me to do is make big assumptions or test assumptions. And that's what we're going to do. So these are the 5 assumptions we're going to look at today. Firstly, portals are growing faster in developing markets. It's kind of an obvious one. You might have assumed this already, but we're going to test it with stats. The second assumption, that there isn't quite as much money to be made from just being a real estate portal, doing normal real estate portal things in developing markets. I think quite a lot of people have spoken about that assumption already. We're going to test it. The third one, that portals in developing markets kind of need outside investment to grow or to be the leader. The fourth one, that user experience is worse on portals in developing markets. This is an interesting one. There are some stats about this, and we're going to have a look. And lastly, and most difficult and most importantly, the assumption that there are more opportunities to innovate for portals in developing markets. So let's get on with it. The first assumption, that real estate portals are growing faster in developing markets. I mean, even the word developing markets implies growth, right? And you probably all assume that, yeah, they are growing faster in developing markets, and the stats would seem to back this up. You might have assumed this, but you probably hadn't got all the publicly available data and plotted it in a graph. That's what the graph looks like, and as we can see, they seem to be growing much faster, or at least fluctuating a lot more. But I've just given you like a really hard and fast conclusion about a broad swathe of businesses. Really important to note, there are always caveats with real estate portal companies. This slide here is from a presentation that I did in our Miami conference last year. Making that presentation was really difficult. The idea was I was going to come up with like a really big, broad conclusion about real estate portals around several theories. I made about 25 slides like this, and all of them turned out to be untrue, and it completely ruined my presentation. This particular slide looked like it was going to be the basis of my presentation. Basically, the idea was to say real estate portals specialist companies, so not general classifieds, not portals run by agent associations. The specialists are doing better. That was the theory. I made some graphs. They all look nice. They all look coherent, except when I did some fact checking, they all fell to pieces. So this is the same graph, but with the Chinese portals removed. It's completely different. It ruined my narrative. It ruined the story. In the end, that presentation ended up being something like, portals are all the same, or they look the same, apart from Korea for some reason, but they're all very, very different. So any hard and fast conclusions I give, like in the previous slide, take it with a pinch of salt, always. Another caveat before we move on to talk about profit is that real estate portals can't even agree on how to express metrics. I think on my big spreadsheet for this presentation, there were 33 real estate portal companies or segments or whatever. And between those 33, there are 15 different ways of expressing profit. The really brave ones just call it EBITDA, by the way. Some people call it NPAT, whatever that is. The point is, the next slide is not a scientific analysis. It's just, it is what it is. It's not a scientific analysis, but as you can see, there's a massive gap, right? So assumption number 2, that real estate portals don't make as much money, as much profit in developing markets is kind of true, even if it's not, a scientifically tested theory. There's a huge gap. So don't just sit around and wait for your market to mature in a developing country, is what we're saying here. And so that previous slide was kind of an aggregation of all the data. But the same is true when we zoom in, right? The same is true for case studies. This is the case study of India. Obviously a developing market. There's lots of different portal companies trying to dominate in India. Here we've got 3 of them. We've got 99 Acres, which is the kind of, legacy classifieds player. We've got REA India, which is at least as of recently, kind of a leader in terms of traffic, and they've got a whole load of money that they're putting into it. And Square Yards, which is not really 100% a portal company, but they do own a portal, and they operate in the same market. The point of this slide is all three of them are operating at similarly, I don't want to say unsustainable EBITDA margins, but let's just say negative EBITDA margins. And it seems that the reason that they are operating at negative EBITDA margins is because it's really expensive to make a real estate portal leader in this country. This is a quote from one of the CEOs of those three companies when they delivered their latest yearly financials, basically saying, we're not making money because of the existing home segment, of the portal, the basic business, right? We'll move on. Assumption number three. Assumption number three was that portals in developing markets need outside investment. I recently went through about, I think it was 625 real estate portal businesses around the world, asking various questions, filling in a spreadsheet. One of those questions was, is this real estate portal company owned locally or by a foreign interest, with the criteria being, I think, 51% shareholding, right? As we can see, real estate portals, or at least leading real estate portals in mature markets tend to be owned by native interests, and those in developing markets tend to be owned by foreign interests, right? So it seems pretty cut and dried, this. And that's the same data on a map, except there are some exceptions. So we talked about exceptions and caveats at the beginning, and there's always some when you look at real estate portals together. So you can see there's some blue on the map. So the blue is the real estate portals that are run by native interests. And you can see that in a few developing nations like Bolivia, Nigeria, Ghana, Iran, there are a few leading portal companies that are owned by native interests, right? Which is kind of going against what we were saying, except exceptions. Starting up on my left, you've got Corotos and Mecasa, which, yes, as of right now, they are leading real estate, well, not always verticals, but leading real estate marketplaces that are owned by local interests in developing markets. But they didn't used to be. Both of them were reasonably recently sold back to local interests, so they don't count. Down the bottom there, you've got Ultracasas. Sean out there in the audience probably frowning at me because he's saying Infocasas is the leader in Bolivia. Yeah, it's up for debate, basically. So although it is, according to SimilarWeb anyway, the leader in terms of traffic in Bolivia, it's really disputed, and Infocasas is catching up. And then on my right there, you've got Zimbabwe, Kazakhstan, and Iran. So yeah, those are all leading real estate portals in developing markets that are locally owned. But does anyone in here really want to invest in Zimbabwe or Iran? Probably not, right? So there's always exceptions. Take everything with a pinch of salt, right? Ooh. Assumption number 4, user experience on portals in developing markets is worse. Again, it seems really obvious and logical to say that, but the stats don't necessarily back it up. What you're looking at are some stats from a report that I did in 2021. It was really, really tedious to collect all the data. I went through, I think, about 800 real estate marketplace websites around the world and looked at the presence or lack of certain user-friendly features. And as you can see, real estate marketplace sites in mature markets are much more likely to have a map, for example. They're also much more likely to have a pet-friendly filter, although I would probably discount that one on cultural grounds. The point of this slide is that when we divide the results of that study into mature markets and developing markets, the ones in the middle, so draw your own search, virtual tour filters, keyword search, and my favorite, which you should all have on your portals, by the way, scrolling results from the results page, scrolling photos from the results page. Basically, they're not standard anywhere, and there's not such a huge gap when it comes to like mature or developed markets, is what we're saying, right? It's kind of anecdotal when it comes to this assumption. And that's backed up by another set of stats that we have, thanks to our friends at iSpy360. Last year, they went through a lot of leading real estate portals around the world and basically looked at the percentage of listings that have virtual tours on various portals. As you can see, yeah, at the top, you've got Singapore, you've got Poland, you've got Finland. These are all developed markets, fair enough. But interesting for me is number 3, Brazil, 15% of listings in August, the leading real estate portal in Brazil had a virtual tour, right? That's a developing market. And then even more interesting, number 14, Peru. Back in August, the leading real estate portal in Peru had a higher percentage of listings that had a virtual tour than Zillow, for example. So the point here is it's kind of anecdotal. Some real estate portals in mature markets have terrible user experience. I can tell you I've looked through all of them. I'm not going to name names. And some real estate portals in developing markets have great user experience. So the assumption kind of doesn't work. We will move on to our most important and our most difficult to prove assumption, that there are more opportunities to innovate for portals in developing markets. Now, this is an assumption that doesn't lend itself to kind of binary data collection, let's say. And we're going to have to use our imagination and a proxy metric or two here. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, well, what kind of proxy metrics are there for this? I think that the presence of for sale by owner listings is a good proxy metric here. Why? Bear with me. Obviously, if a real estate portal allows for sale by owner listings, their agents are less inclined to, let's say, get on their backs if they try other things. So if you have FSBO listings, your agents aren't probably that angry at you just as a baseline, right? And it seems, so this is, the data here was from those 650 portals that I looked at earlier this year. It seems that in developing markets, for sale by owner listings are much more common. Okay, so that's, I guess, halfway towards a conclusion on this. One of the other questions, by the way, was, does this real estate portal make its business model clear? This, as far as we're concerned today with our assumptions, is pretty inconclusive. All of you out there are pretty bad at telling an agent how much they're going to pay. It doesn't matter if you're in a developing market or a mature market. It's really difficult to figure out real estate portal business models unless you actually pick up the phone and talk to them. But more relevant for our assumption is that graph on the bottom. We can see that real estate portals in mature markets are much more likely to have a subscription-based business model, right? Again, it's an assumption that we all probably have anyway. And real estate marketplaces, I should say, are much more likely to charge a commission or to be kind of a hybrid between a brokerage or a portal or a marketplace. And this is, I mean, we've got a lot of them in the audience here today. A lot of people have been talking about this. And this is what I want to talk about a little bit, because for me, when I first came into this job, I remember thinking, real estate online marketplace, that sounds pretentious. That sounds like someone wearing a gilet and working as a VC made that, you know? For me, it was just real estate portal, what are you talking about? For me, in a mature market, I have a very clear sense of what a real estate portal is. There's a very clear image that's conjured in my head when I think of portal, and it's very clear when I think of the word broker or agent, right? It's this guy in a shiny suit who's probably not very honest, and he's trying to sell you something. Except, in many developing markets, it's kind of becoming the same thing, and a good example there is Quinto Andar. Quinto Andar, by the way, who started off kind of as a brokerage, and they've now kind of bought up a lot of what I would think of as portals. It's a great example. And these are some of, by the way, this map is incomplete. I didn't have time to, this is a new set of data collection that I've started and not finished because it's actually it's much more difficult than you'd think. These are what I'm calling transactional thoroughbreds. So what these are actual discovery sites, in the sense of, like, when I think of a portal, I go to a portal to begin my search for a home, right? They're not somewhere where I would be referred to by a portal. They're not what I would think of as a traditional agent site. They are discovery sites, right? They are also businesses that started out charging a commission, getting into the transaction, not, you know, Zillow or Realtor that got into doing that 15 years later and, you know, it only represents maybe 30% of their revenues. No, they don't count. Not necessarily also the shiny suit brigade like Redfin or Zolo in Canada, and not necessarily the ones that operate in like a niche, so like, you know, booking conference spaces or, you know, short-term rentals. No, we're not talking about those. These are transactional thoroughbreds. And as I said, it's an incomplete map. The point of the map is most of them are in Southeast Asia and Latin America. So coming back to our assumptions, I think, and you're all very welcome to debate me on this, I think that portals, yes, are growing faster in developing countries. The evidence, or the available evidence, does seem to support that. Although, take it with a pinch of salt, always. Not every company reveals their financial numbers, and they certainly don't all reveal them to me. Assumption number 2, that there isn't as much profit to be made from just doing general portal things the way they do in mature markets for those in developing markets. Again, I think it's true. I think it's completely true. I think most people in here probably agree with me. Remember that big gap between the profit of the mature market portals and those in developing markets? It may not be scientific, but it exists. It's there. Our third assumption, that real estate portals in developing markets really need outside investment. A little bit controversial, but I think to become a market leader, mostly you do need outside investment, or at least outside advisors, let's say. There are obviously exceptions. So, we said Iran, Zimbabwe, some of these places where people don't really want to invest yet. Yeah, you can be a market leader and not have outside investment, but they're edge cases, let's say. Number 4, the user experience is worse on portals in developing markets. Anecdotally, as someone who has looked through probably more real estate portals over the last 3 years than anyone else on the planet, I can tell you it really depends. There are some great user experiences on portals in developing markets, and there are some shocking user experiences on market leaders in Europe. It just really does depend. Don't keep that assumption. And lastly, our assumption that there are more opportunities to innovate for real estate portal in developing markets. I believe it's true. I think probably most people in this room agree with me. You can get away with more. Your agents aren't as organized. They're not going to get as angry with you. You can do more. By way of summing up, by the way, because I'm a millennial and because I like them and because I read a study that said you're 60% more likely to pay attention to a meme than you are to a normal marketing graphic, we're going to sum up with memes. So this is the Mature Market Portal Starter Pack. They normally are owned by domestic interests. Agents tend to hate them, but they really need them. They look the same pretty much everywhere. Like I said, when I think of the word real estate portal, it's like a really clear image in my head of what it is, what it does, how it makes money. And it's the same in, I don't know, New Zealand as it is in Sweden, right? They tend to be kind of flat with their main business model, represented there by a chart from a previous presentation. That's agent numbers of Rightmove, Scout, and Property Guru, all flat. They don't have FSBO listings because their agents won't let them. They make loads of money if they're managed properly. And they are absolutely gagging to get into mortgage because it's where they see their next phase of growth coming from, right? Let's contrast it with the developing market portal starter pack. Uncle Rupert up there, he stays the same. They tend to be owned by the same people, basically rich people in rich countries. The user experience, it could be great, it could be awful. It really just does depend on the market. You can't really think of it in terms of, you can't think of user experience on portals in terms of, developing market, mature market. Basically, developers are, if you've got good developers, you can be a good developer in, I don't know, Bangladesh, for example, or you could be a good developer in Australia. It really is a level playing field, I think. In terms of their revenue, they fluctuate a lot. They're not flat. I think probably they need agents more than agents need them for now. I'm happy to be debated on it. They love FSBO listings, usually. They're not profitable. They are in the investment phase. I've read a lot of their, let's say, their stuff to investors, and they say investment phase quite a lot. And sometimes there's this kind of weird hybrid that, as someone from a mature market, I have struggled to understand so far, which is kind of a cross between a portal and an online marketplace that charges commission. They like using the word platform. I've been hearing the word platform from a lot of you, and it's changing how I think about real estate portals. Lastly, just a bit of self-promotion. Read us, subscribe to us if you like this. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Ed, thank you for that. Can we bring up the questions? There's some questions here. Here we go. Oh, there's one. Where are we?
There's a few.
Yeah. Oh, you got more than I've got. No, you got better right. In developing markets, have majority foreign-owned portals maybe dominating now, but over time, wouldn't local ones be the better at penetrating?
Oof. That's a question for people who invest. I'm an editor, guys. Just bear that in mind. I'm not a brain box. In answer to this question, I would say. I would say, yeah, once the market really becomes mature, you'll have people in those markets that really understand, the market better than somebody from outside. But I don't know. That's a predicting the future question. It's a bit difficult.
Okay. Geez, Darius likes you. Okay. Best presentation. There you go. Bang.
Thanks,
okay.
Darius.
What's the toughest part of the job being the editor for the portal industry?
Ooh, yeah, the toughest part of the job is probably when you all send me really boring press releases. We've got a new filter. Can you write about it? I might be using ChatGPT for those in the future.
Okay.
No.
Do you think portals in mature markets will start launching portals in developing markets, thereby leveraging the expertise on tech and design?
That's an interesting question. What's really interesting, and this goes back to that presentation I was talking about that I tried to come up with for Miami. One of the theories, and I tested a few of them. I was trying to come up with a really good, solid theory about all real estate portal companies. And one of those theories that I tested was, not very many real estate portal specialist companies have jumped over a border, with their own product. They tend to buy. And it's really, really, when you actually look at who has done it, it's incredibly rare for someone to actually successfully take what they've done in one country, jump over a border and replicate it. You have to buy, it seems.
Yep, I would agree there. Have you seen any legacy brokerage player, Realogy, Keller Williams, etc., do anything innovative or interesting, given the changing market dynamics?
The quick answer to that is probably no. I'll be honest, I don't look too hard at the legacy, brokerage players.
Okay. Why are portals not leveraging on the wealth of data they have of active inventory to provide market insights?
I think they are. I've seen a lot of portals that do that. I don't know who B is or where they operate, but I see a lot of portals doing it. Maybe they don't market their insight products very well, let's say, but I think they do.
Okay. And what do you think of proper birds scraping portals?
I'm in favour. As someone who used to do that, I'm in favour.
Okay. As you are in favour of ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a joke, by the way. I'm not going to use ChatGPT to write up all of your press releases.
Yeah, I would. Okay, what's the most impressive innovations in the developing markets that you've seen?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Come and find me after. I have written about these things. It's just when you put me on the spot. The most impressive one I've seen in a developed market, by the way, and my presentation in Madrid was all about subscription. So what Scout24 are doing by charging the user a subscription is, honestly, I think it's genius. REA India have just started doing something a little bit similar because I think they're clever and they understand that that's the way forward.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Ed, for a very interesting
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
presentation.